The first sign of trouble came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Deep in the underground bunker of Earth's Space Defense Command, a junior officer stared at his screen with wide eyes. The coffee cup in his hand stopped halfway to his mouth as he watched the readings spike again. "Captain Miller," he called out, his voice echoing through the control room. "Sir, you need to see this." James Miller walked quickly across the room. At 45 years old, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had spent decades preparing for moments like this. His gray uniform bore the patches of the International Space Defense Coalition, humanity's united front against possible threats from beyond the stars. "What have you got?" Miller asked, leaning over the officer's shoulder. "The deep space sensors near Pluto's orbit are picking up something big, sir. Multiple objects, moving in formation. They're not asteroids." The officer pulled up another screen showing energy readings, and they're giving off power signatures unlike anything we've seen before. Miller's face remained calm, but his mind raced. For years, the ISDC had run simulations of first contact scenarios. Now it seemed they would find out if their preparations had been enough. "How many objects are we talking about?" Miller asked, his eyes scanning the data. "At least 50 large vessels, sir, and those are just the ones we can track. The formation spans roughly the distance between Earth and the Moon." Miller straightened up and pressed a button on his comm unit. "This is Captain Miller. I'm initiating First Contact Protocol Alpha. All senior staff report to the command center immediately. This is not a drill." Within minutes, the underground facility hummed with activity. Officers and scientists rushed to their stations, while large screens displayed the approaching fleet's position. General Robert Thompson, the overall commander of Earth's defense forces, arrived looking like he had aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. "Give me the situation, Miller," Thompson ordered, his voice grave. "Unknown fleet approaching from the outer solar system, sir. Size and formation suggest an organized force. They're moving at speeds our current technology can't match." Miller pointed to the main screen where red dots showed the fleet's progress. "At their current speed, they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This was what humanity had both feared and prepared for since they first looked up at the stars. The silence broke when all communication systems suddenly activated at once. Every screen, every radio, every digital device on Earth received the same signal. The message appeared in perfect English, suggesting advanced translation technology. "People of Earth," a deep voice announced, "I am Commander Marcus Rex of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world has been chosen to join our grand empire. We bring order to chaos, civilization to the primitive, and protection to the vulnerable. Your resistance would be futile. Your acceptance will be rewarded." Miller watched as the main screen showed an image of the speaker. Commander Rex appeared almost human, except for his unusual height and the subtle metallic sheen of his skin. His uniform displayed countless medals and symbols of rank. "They're broadcasting in every known human language," one of the communications officers reported. "The message is being received by every device capable of displaying text or playing audio." General Thompson turned to Miller. "Options. We've detected no immediate weapons activation, sir," Miller reported. "Their technology is clearly advanced, but they're making no aggressive moves yet. This looks like their standard first contact protocol. Show overwhelming force, demand submission, but avoid immediate conflict. And if we refuse?" Miller's jaw tightened. Based on their fleet size and technology level, they could likely overwhelm our conventional defenses within hours. "Conventional defenses, yes," Thompson said quietly. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Captain Miller, you have command of this situation. I need to contact the Security Council about our unconventional options." As Thompson left the room, Miller stood at the command center, watching the red dots move ever closer to Earth. Humanity had just met its first alien civilization, and they came not in peace, but with demands. The next 72 hours would determine Earth's fate. The junior officer who had first spotted the fleet looked up at Miller. "Sir, what do we do now?" Miller's expression hardened. Now we show them why they should have sent scouts first." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Earth's governments had united faster than anyone thought possible when faced with an alien threat. Captain Miller hadn't slept, surviving on coffee and determination as he coordinated with military commands worldwide. The massive holographic display in the command center showed the hegemony's fleet, now parked just beyond the moon's orbit. Their ships looked like massive silver arrows, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities. The sight alone was enough to make most people lose hope. But Miller wasn't most people. "Another transmission incoming," announced the communications officer. "They're broadcasting worldwide again." Commander Rex's image appeared on all screens. This time, he didn't bother with pleasantries. "Your time to consider our generous offer grows short," he said, his metallic skin gleaming under his ship's lights. "The Galactic hegemony has incorporated 10,000 worlds into our empire. Some chose wisdom and prospered. Others," he paused for effect, "others chose poorly." Miller watched as Rex pulled up images of devastated planets. The message was clear: resist, and Earth would join them. "We demand 30% of your world's resources as tribute," Rex continued. "You will accept our governing council's oversight. In return, you receive our protection and access to some of our lesser technologies." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "This is a fair offer. Better than most receive." General Thompson, who had just returned from another emergency meeting, stood beside Miller. "They always do this," he said quietly. "Show up with overwhelming force, demand submission, offer scraps in return. Classic empire building." Miller nodded. "But they made a mistake, sir." "Oh, they gave us time to prepare." Miller turned to his staff. "Status of Project Prometheus." A young officer checked her tablet. "Dr. White reports they're ready for a demonstration, sir. The device is primed and targeted." Thompson's eyes widened. "You're not seriously considering?" "With respect, sir," Miller interrupted, "they expect us to either surrender or try to fight them conventionally. They don't know about Prometheus. The element of surprise is the only advantage we have." The general was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do it." Miller picked up his comm unit. "Dr. White, you have authorization. Target their flagship's auxiliary systems only. Let's show them our warning shot." Miles away, in a secret facility, Dr. Anna White and her team initiated their experimental device. They had only tested it on small scales before. Now they would find out if their theories about large-scale application were correct. On the main screen, Commander Rex was still talking, listing more demands. Suddenly, his image flickered. In space, visible through their long-range cameras, the Empire's flagship shuddered as its external lights went dark. "What? What is this?" Rex's voice had lost its smoothness. For the first time, he sounded uncertain. Miller stepped forward, making sure his transmission would be received by the entire fleet. "Commander Rex, this is Captain James Miller of Earth's Defense Forces. Consider that a demonstration of our capabilities. A small one." The command center was silent as Miller continued. "You assumed we would be primitive, easy to conquer. You were wrong. What you just witnessed was a controlled burst from one of our defense systems. We can trigger the same effect across your entire fleet." He was bluffing, of course. The Prometheus device needed hours to recharge, and they weren't sure it would work twice. But Rex didn't know that. "You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet beyond Neptune's orbit," Miller said firmly. "If you comply, we will consider opening diplomatic relations as equals. If you don't," he let the threat hang in the air. The silence that followed was deafening. On the screen, Rex's face showed a mix of anger and something else. Fear. "You dare threaten the hegemony?" Rex's voice shook slightly. "We have conquered galaxies." "And yet," Miller replied calmly, You've never encountered Earth before. 1 hour, Commander. Choose wisely. As the transmission ended, Thompson turned to Miller. God, I hope you know what you're doing. Miller watched the fleet on the display, his expression grim. So do I, sir. So do I. Deep beneath the red sands of Mars, Dr. Anna White rushed through the corridors of Project Prometheus. The facility hummed with energy after their first successful test against the Empire's flagship. Scientists and engineers worked frantically at their stations, trying to prepare the device for another potential use. Status report, she called out, entering the main control room. The massive chamber was filled with screens showing complex equations and energy readings. At its center stood their greatest achievement, the Prometheus device. It looked deceptively simple, a silver sphere about 3 meters across, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in the light. The dark matter reaction is stable, her assistant reported, but the containment field is showing stress fractures. We might get 2 more shots at most before the whole system fails. Dr. White ran her hands through her graying hair. 20 years of her life had gone into this project, working in secret while the world above went about its normal life. Now everything depended on it. Her screen lit up with an incoming call from Earth Command. Captain Miller's tired face appeared. Dr. White, he said, the Empire's ships are moving, but not toward Neptune. They're spreading out, taking up attack positions. We need options. She moved to the main console, bringing up the device's specifications. The first demonstration worked perfectly, Captain. We disrupted their power systems exactly as planned. But, she hesitated. But what? The technology isn't as stable as we hoped. The dark matter reactions are harder to control at this scale. We're dealing with forces that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. On screen, Miller's expression darkened. How many more times can we use it? Twice, maybe 3 times if we're lucky. After that, the containment field will fail. And if that happens, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew the risks of uncontrolled dark matter reactions. The Empire doesn't know that, though, Miller said thoughtfully. Tell me about the next demonstration. Can we make it more impressive? Dr. White typed rapidly on her console, bringing up new calculations. We can target multiple ships at once, but it will put more strain on the system. It would be one hell of a show, though. Mike convinced them we're more powerful than we actually are. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring through the facility. One of the engineers shouted, "Multiple objects entering Mars orbit. They've found us." Dr. White's heart raced as she checked the readings. 3 Imperial scout ships had broken away from the main fleet and were approaching Mars. They must have detected the energy signature from the first test. Captain, she said urgently, we need to move fast. If they locate this facility. They won't, Miller cut in. Because we're going to show them exactly why that would be a bad idea. Dr. White, can you target those scout ships? She nodded, already moving to the control station. Yes, but it will drain more power than the first test. We might only get 1 more shot after this. Make it count, Miller ordered. Show them what happens when they get too close to our secrets. The Prometheus device hummed to life, its surface patterns swirling faster as power built up. Dr. White's fingers flew over the controls, making minute adjustments. 20 years of theoretical work and secret experiments had led to this moment. Targeting solution locked, she announced. Ready on your command. In orbit, the Imperial scouts moved closer, their sensors probing the Martian surface. They had no idea they were about to become part of humanity's second demonstration. Fire, Miller commanded. Dr. White pressed the activation sequence. The device pulsed once, twice, 3 times. On their screens, they watched as all 3 scout ships suddenly went dark, their power systems completely shut down by the controlled dark matter burst. Message sent, Dr. White said quietly, watching the powerless ships drift in Mars orbit. But Captain, we just used a lot of our remaining power. Whatever we do next has to end this. Miller's voice was firm. It will. Because now they know we can protect not just Earth, but our entire solar system. The question is, will they believe we can do much more? Dr. White looked at the straining containment field indicators. They better, she said, because we're running out of chances to prove it. The mood in Earth's command center was tense. Everyone watched as the 3 disabled Imperial scout ships drifted helplessly in Mars orbit. Captain Miller stood at the main console, waiting for the Empire's response. They didn't have to wait long. "You dare." Commander Rex's voice boomed through the communication system. His metallic face showed pure rage. "Those ships carried over 300 of our people." "Your people are unharmed," Miller replied calmly. "Life support systems were untouched. We only disabled their power and weapons. They'll be able to restart their engines in approximately 6 hours." He paused for effect. "Consider this a demonstration of our precision. We can target specific systems without destroying the ships themselves." The command center staff watched nervously as Rex's face twisted with anger and something else. Uncertainty. The Empire had never encountered a civilization that could disable their ships so easily. "Captain," a sensor operator called out, "the main fleet is moving again. They're pulling back from Earth orbit." Miller allowed himself a small smile. The bluff was working, but they weren't safe yet. His screen lit up with a priority message from Mars. Dr. White's face appeared, looking worried. "Captain, we have a problem. The containment field is deteriorating faster than expected after that last shot. If we try to use the device again at full power..." She shook her head. Miller kept his face neutral, aware that the Empire might be watching. "Understood, Doctor. Continue monitoring the situation." He ended the transmission, hoping Rex hadn't noticed anything suspicious. "Your technology is impressive," Rex admitted grudgingly, "but do not think this display will save you. The Empire has faced many challenges in its expansion. All were overcome." "Commander," Miller responded, "look at your sensor readings of the dark matter burst we used. Your scientists must be telling you how advanced this technology is. We've had decades to perfect it, to build defenses throughout our solar system." Another bluff, but one backed by their previous demonstrations. On the main screen, they could see the Empire's fleet regrouping. Over 800 ships, each one capable of destroying a small country, now hung back cautiously. The 3 disabled scout ships served as a clear warning of Earth's supposed capabilities. "You offer us no choice then," Rex demanded. "Submit to the Empire or face destruction." Miller shook his head. "No, Commander. We offer you a different choice. Recognize Earth as a sovereign power, establish diplomatic relations as equals, and engage in peaceful trade. Or," he gestured at the disabled scouts, "risk your entire fleet against a weapon you don't understand." The command center fell silent. Everything hinged on this moment. If Rex called their bluff, if he ordered a full attack, Earth would have at most one more shot with the Prometheus device. After that, they would be defenseless. Minutes passed. Miller could almost see Rex weighing his options, calculating the risks. The Empire had never retreated before, never shown weakness, but they had also never faced a civilization with technology that could bypass their shields and disable their ships without destroying them. Finally, Rex spoke. His voice was cold but controlled. Perhaps there is wisdom in exploring diplomatic options first." The tension in the command center eased slightly. Miller nodded. "A wise choice, Commander. As a show of good faith, we will provide your scout ships with the energy signature needed to restart their systems early. Consider it a gesture of potential future cooperation." As Rex's image disappeared from the screen, General Thompson approached Miller. "Well played, Captain. But what happens when they realize we can't actually repeat those demonstrations? That the Prometheus device is almost burned out." Miller watched the Empire's fleet beginning to move away from Earth. "By then, sir, I hope we'll have turned our bluff into reality. We've bought ourselves time. Now we need to make the most of it." In the Mars facility, Dr. White and her team were already working on solutions, trying to stabilize the device for one final use, if it became necessary. The next few days would determine whether humanity had truly won its freedom, or just delayed the inevitable. Commander Marcus Rex paced the bridge of his flagship, his metallic skin reflecting the dim light of the emergency systems. Around him, his best scientists worked frantically to understand the technology that had so easily disabled their ships. "Impossible," muttered his chief scientist, looking at the readings again. "A civilization at their development stage shouldn't have this capability. Our scans showed they'd barely reached their moon." Rex slammed his fist on a nearby console. "Yet they disabled our ships with ease. Explain that." Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Miller was facing his own crisis. He sat in a secure conference room with Dr. White, who had returned from Mars, and General Thompson. The holographic displays showed the Empire's fleet, still maintaining a safe distance. "The device won't last another full-scale demonstration," Dr. White explained, pointing to complex diagrams. "The containment field is failing. If we try to use it again, we risk a catastrophic dark matter explosion." Miller rubbed his tired eyes. "How long can we maintain the bluff?" "Their sensors are constantly scanning Mars now," she replied. "They're trying to understand our technology. Sooner or later, they'll realize we're running on fumes." Back on the Imperial flagship, Rex received a priority transmission from the Empire's High Council. The ancient faces of the council members appeared on his screen, their expressions severe. "Commander," the head counselor spoke, "your report is disturbing. You say these humans have mastered dark matter manipulation." "Yes, Counselor. They've demonstrated it twice now. Our scientists confirm it's not a trick. Somehow, they've developed technology we thought was theoretical." The council members whispered among themselves. Finally, the head counselor spoke again. "We cannot allow this technology to exist outside Imperial control. Yet we cannot risk losing the fleet. You must find a way to secure this technology without triggering its use against our forces." In Earth's command center, Miller watched as unusual activity began aboard the Empire's ships. "They're powering up their long-range scanners," a sensor operator reported, "all focused on Mars." Dr. White's face paled. "If they get detailed scans of the facility, they'll know we're bluffing," Miller finished. He turned to General Thompson. "Sir, we need options." Thompson studied the tactical display. "We could try to jam their scans, but that would only make them more suspicious. We need something bigger, something to make them back off completely." Dr. White suddenly straightened in her chair. "What if we leak them some data? Not about our current situation, but about theoretical applications of the technology. Show them what we could potentially do." Miller caught on quickly. "Make them think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do." "Exactly," she nodded. "I can prepare some equations, some theoretical papers. Make it look like the demonstrations were just basic applications of something far more powerful." On the Imperial flagship, Rex received another urgent report. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from their Mars facility. The patterns they're unlike anything in our database." Rex watched the readings with growing concern. The humans were either testing something new or deliberately letting them see their capabilities. Either way, it made him uncomfortable. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "Intelligence Division has intercepted some human scientific communications. You need to see this." Rex reviewed the intercepted data, Dr. White's carefully crafted theoretical papers. His eyes widened as he read. If even half of these theories were possible. In the Earth Command Center, Miller allowed himself a small smile as he watched the Imperial ships scanning patterns change. Their sensors were pulling back, reducing power. "They took the bait," Dr. White whispered. "The papers I leaked suggest we could potentially create artificial black holes with the next version of our technology." "Can we?" Thompson asked. "Not even close," she admitted. "But they don't know that. And more importantly, they can't risk finding out if we're bluffing." Miller nodded slowly. Sometimes the fear of a weapon is more powerful than the weapon itself. Let's hope that proves true here. The Imperial shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, its silver hull gleaming in the morning sun. Inside, Lord Thomas Grey, the Empire's chief negotiator, prepared for what might be the most important diplomatic mission of his career. His orders were simple: discover the truth about Earth's capabilities while appearing to negotiate peace. At the landing site, Captain Miller stood with Dr. White and a small delegation. Armed guards surrounded the area, more for show than actual security. They needed to appear confident, in control. "Remember," Miller whispered to the group, "he's here to test us, not make peace. Every word, every gesture will be analyzed." The shuttle landed smoothly, and Lord Grey emerged. He looked almost human, like most of the Empire's species, but his movements were too precise, too calculated. His eyes seemed to record everything they saw. "Welcome to Earth," Miller said, stepping forward. "I'm Captain James Miller." Grey smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "A pleasure, Captain. The Empire is most interested in establishing peaceful relations with your world." Inside the conference room, the real game began. Maps and data displays covered the walls, carefully selected to show Earth's supposed defensive capabilities, while revealing nothing actually useful. "We are prepared to recognize Earth's independence," Grey announced, "in exchange for sharing your dark matter technology." Miller kept his face neutral. "I'm afraid that's not possible. The technology is too unstable for sharing at this time. We're still learning to control it ourselves." "Yet you've managed 2 impressive demonstrations," Grey noted, watching Miller's reaction carefully. Dr. White stepped in. "Controlled bursts under specific conditions. The full implications of the technology are still beyond our understanding." She pulled up some complex equations on a screen. "These are just our preliminary theories about its potential applications." Grey studied the equations. They were real scientific theories about dark matter, mixed with just enough plausible speculation to be convincing. The Empire scientists would spend months trying to decode their hidden meanings. "Perhaps," Grey suggested smoothly, "we could arrange a visit to your Mars facility. A gesture of trust between future allies." "I'm afraid that's impossible," Miller replied firmly. "The facility's containment systems are extremely sensitive to outside interference. We can't risk any disruption." In truth, the facility was barely functioning. The Prometheus device's containment field was holding together by sheer luck and the constant work of Dr. White's team. Grey's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Empire has vast experience with advanced technology. We could help stabilize your systems." "Thank you, but we prefer to develop the technology at our own pace," Miller said. "We've seen how the Empire treats worlds that share their technology too freely." The implied threat hung in the air. Earth knew more about the Empire than they had let on. Throughout the day, the dance continued. Grey probed for weaknesses while Miller and Dr. White maintained their careful facade. Every question was a trap, every answer a shield. Back on the Imperial flagship, Commander Rex watched the negotiations via a secure channel. "They're hiding something," he muttered to his advisors. "But what?" "Sir," his science officer reported, "those equations they showed. If they're accurate, the humans might be capable of creating weaponized dark matter tiers in space itself. The destructive potential is incalculable." Rex frowned. The equations were beyond their current understanding, which meant either the humans were bluffing brilliantly, or they truly possessed technology that could threaten the entire Empire. As the sun set, Lord Grey returned to his shuttle. "You've given me much to think about, Captain," he said. "The Empire will consider your position carefully." Miller watched the shuttle take off. "Do you think he bought it?" he asked Dr. White quietly. "He doesn't need to buy it completely," she replied. "He just needs to doubt enough to recommend caution. Sometimes, uncertainty is the best weapon." In orbit, Grey transmitted his report to the Imperial High Council. Earth's technology appears genuine, but their reluctance to demonstrate it further suggests limitations. However, the risk of underestimating them is too great. Direct confrontation is not recommended at this time. The chess game had reached its critical point. The next move would determine everything. The Imperial High Council's decision arrived 3 days after Lord Grey's departure. Captain Miller stood in Earth's command center, surrounded by senior staff, as Commander Rex's image appeared on the main screen. The metallic-skinned commander looked like he had aged years in the past week. After careful consideration, Rex announced, his voice formal, "The Imperial High Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's status." Miller held his breath. In the Mars facility, Dr. White and her team watched the transmission, knowing the Prometheus device wouldn't survive another demonstration if things went wrong. Its containment field was barely stable even at rest. "Earth will be classified as a sovereign power," Rex continued, each word seemingly painful for him to speak. "The Empire recognizes your right to independent development of your technologies and resources." A wave of relief swept through the command center, but Miller kept his face neutral. "The people of Earth appreciate the Empire's wisdom in this matter," he said carefully. Rex's expression hardened. "However, know this, you will be watched. Any attempt to share your dark matter technology with other worlds will be considered an act of war." "Understood," Miller replied. "Though I should mention that we've already established automated defense systems throughout our solar system. Any unauthorized surveillance might trigger unfortunate reactions." It was another bluff, but one backed by their previous demonstrations. Rex's slight flinch showed it had hit its mark. "One more thing," Rex added. "The Empire is updating its databases. Earth will be marked with a new designation. Approach with caution. Extreme risk. I suggest you remember what that means. We will not always be so diplomatic." The transmission ended. For a moment, nobody in the command center spoke. Then, General Thompson broke the silence. "They're really leaving," he said, watching as the massive Imperial fleet began moving away from Earth orbit. "We actually did it." Miller allowed himself to smile for the first time in days. "We did more than that, sir. We made them fear us." He turned to the communications officer. "Get me Dr. White." Her tired face appeared on the screen. "I heard everything, Captain." The bluff worked. "Thanks to your quick thinking with those theoretical papers," Miller said. "How's our friend doing?" He meant the Prometheus device, of course. "Stable for now," she replied. "But we got lucky. If they had demanded one more demonstration." She left the sentence unfinished. "Then we better make sure we're ready next time," Miller said. "Because there will be a next time. The Empire doesn't take defeats well, even diplomatic ones." General Thompson nodded. "I'll speak to the World Council. Now that the immediate threat is over, we need to focus on development. Dr. White's team needs more resources, more facilities, and more scientists," Dr. White added. "We understand the basic principles now. With proper funding and global cooperation, we might be able to make those theoretical papers a reality." Over the next few hours, the Empire's fleet moved past Neptune's orbit. Earth's long-range sensors tracked them until they disappeared into deep space. In their wake, they left a changed world. National boundaries seemed less important now. Old rivalries faded as humanity faced the reality of their position in the galaxy. They had won their first interstellar confrontation not through superior firepower, but through cunning, unity, and the careful use of fear. In his office, Miller looked at the final report from the long-range sensors. The Empire was gone, but they'd be back. Next time, though, humanity would be ready. Not just with clever bluffs and desperate gambits, but with real power. Dr. White's team was already working on a new version of the Prometheus device, one built with the combined resources and knowledge of all Earth's nations. The theories they had used to bluff the Empire would become reality. "Captain," his communications officer called, "the World Council is ready for your briefing." Miller stood, straightening his uniform. The real work was just beginning. Earth had earned its place among the stars, but keeping it would be the greater challenge. "Tell them I'm on my way," he said. and send a message to Dr. White. Tell her to think bigger this time. The Empire gave us a designation. Approach with caution. Let's make sure we live up to it.